Welcome, everybody, to Microsoft Unboxed podcast episode number 20. I am your host today, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined by.
David Allen, the Big 2-0. Thank you for hanging out with us for 20 of these episodes, folks.
Yeah, we're back with another list of news headlines to kind of go through and walk you through all the ongoings in Microsoft world. Despite what we thought was going to be kind of a cool down period, there's still a lot of news. None of it headline breaking, so to speak. Again, no antitrust issues or, you know,
Yet,
yet massive malware things or anything like that. But there are some controversial things we'll talk about. With that being said, let me get you into the headlines so you'll know what you're in for this week in news. We're going to be talking about Call of Duty, Black Ops 6 coming to Game Pass and what that could mean for gamers in the future. We'll be talking about Microsoft's Edge getting a bit more responsive as the team breaks it down into individual components. And how that was actually going to work in reality. YouTube Playables will be launching on mobile and web platforms. We'll be talking about Microsoft being a bit concerned about Apple and OpenAI getting kind of cozy together, especially in the lieu of WWDC. We're going to be talking also about the final Redfall update. Yeah, the game came and will basically have went within about a year or so. We'll also be talking
so
about
did the
Iran.
company.
Oh, ouch, ouch, ouch. Too soon, too soon. We'll be talking about, ironically, Microsoft's multi-platform game strategy actually working, sans Redfall. We'll talk about the games that did work for them and what that can mean as far as pushing the industry in a different direction. And then we also want to address Recall. There's been a lot of talk about it since Microsoft introduced it. They've put out some explainer follow-up blog posts, but I don't think the marketing is working very well. I think the internet ran with the idea of, hey, Microsoft's spying on us again. Uh, Branch of pitchforks and torches, and we're going to run them out of town. We'll explain, kind of the realities of it and whether or not that's a warranted response. We might also talk a little bit about Microsoft's strategy change when it comes to Copilot on Windows, despite what they said about the whole platform last week. That being said, do you want to get everyone started with the headline that you picked first about Black Ops?
Well, I'm going to jump into something that a lot of people, at least our gamers, are interested in, and even some of our folks that have followed the Activision Blizzard merger over the past year or so. We finally know that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 will be the first title to make it to day one Game Pass post Microsoft
We need one of
buyout.
those like celebration horns. It
Yep.
is it is it is doing what you wanted it to do.
There it is, folks. I've got some mixed feelings about it. I saw something on another pod that I thought was interesting, and I'll throw this out there before I get into the details here. Call of Duty, as we know, is the moneymaker. Always has been, as long as it's out there, probably always will be. So there's, millions of people that pay the full $70 unless you buy the premium version or, with the add-ons that's usually 99. Most people are at least paying the $70 for the title. They're selling millions of copies. So I know there's no Game Pass on PlayStation right now. I don't know if there's going to be any deals for the game subscription service that they have over there for Call of Duty. But my question is, how many Game Pass subscribers will it take to make up the revenue difference of the millions of copies of the title that you sell? And I'm going to say this, I know I hear it every time. Oh, it could have been a DLC. All they did was change the map. I get it. From a business point of view, though, those millions of copies still sell. That's money. So I'm curious, which side of this deal does it come out better on? Does it come out better as a long run play for Game Pass? Because people are going to constantly be adding Game Pass. I don't know how the sales numbers work with a game like Call of Duty, but my thought would be you're getting most of your sales probably within the first month to maybe 45, 60 days. Then, people have made the decision whether they want to purchase it or not. At least with Game Pass, there's ongoing subscribers. So, how does that balance out?
Well, I think Microsoft's going to be double dipping anyway. They will have people who will purchase the game because they don't want to deal with the monthly subscription.
True.
But those same people may see value in having it for other things like Fallout. They may on a whim get Game Pass because of one or two particular games and say, hey, I will play those for as long as I need to with Game Pass as well. And these are the same people that they sold Call of Duty already to. So if you're someone who purchased Call of Duty because you watch Fallout, you're like, I want to get on the Fallout thing, but I don't want to pay $60, $70 for an old game. I'll pay the 14 or whatever, 15, 16 bucks it is now to keep playing, to play that game and have access to it on my PC, on my Xbox, and again, for PlayStation people, on my PC. This kind of leads to one of the stories I was going to talk about later, but might as well just bring it up now since we're already in the groove of things. Microsoft's multi-platform game strategy. I know that we're saying that, Game Pass, and we're usually conflating it with Xbox as in the hardware. But it looks like, Microsoft released, I think it was 2 games over the past 2 months to PlayStation.
They did.
And one of the games, which we kind of expected to do well, was Sea of Thieves. And I think when you look at the 20 best-selling games of April, Sea of Thieves was number 4 after Call of Duty, meaning that the adoption rate on PlayStation was pretty large. And again, to your point, there's no Game Pass app on PlayStation. So these people were most likely playing these things on PC. If I had to wager, right?
I know there. If we're going to wager that, and I think you're.
Well, I guess it was released on PlayStation. I take that back. It was a port released on PlayStation. But I think the idea is that with Game Pass, not necessarily being an app, the next way you drive people is to put things on PC. And I think part of this strategy, we also see that Sony has announced that it's going to be releasing more games on PC because of it's seeing adoption rates that way as well. So this is the strategy Microsoft slowly pushing the industry towards, saying like, hey, PC is the ultimate platform, to which Microsoft has a huge stake in it because they have Windows, where you could be the level playing field. If you can't afford an Xbox, or if your team, Sony or whatever, but you do want to play all the games, the PC is where it's going to be at. And Microsoft also happens, and I think Sony does too, make controllers. So basically all you need is your team's controller, a Game Pass subscription for PC necessarily, and you have access to basically any and every game you want to on that platform. And that's where Microsoft wins. So I think as far as, and I think game number 5 was Fallout, and then Grounded, which was another, I believe, Xbox game ported over to PlayStation. So, it's to the Call of Duty thing, the question that you talked about earlier, where do they make revenue, or how does the money come back from this if they start to make it exclusive or things like that? They make up for it by getting people to try out Game Pass on different platforms, not necessarily the console. And I think, with Sony seeing success on a different platform, being PC, Microsoft still wins there because, again, their game, Call of Duty, is being purchased by Sony people to play on Windows. It's a win-win-win-win for Microsoft in this aspect.
I agree, and I want to touch for just a second on something you said there. PC gaming, you are absolutely right. I think a lot of people have overlooked PC gaming, and I think in some ways PC Game Pass gets overlooked too. But I think as we're seeing these handhelds come out that we've seen from Asus, Lenovo, MSI, I think that is speaking to PC gaming being more popular. And I think part of the reason is after seeing Steam Deck, PC gaming is more accessible. The thing with a console is you hit the power button, all your games play because they were developed for that hardware. There's no configuration to do. There's no technical knowledge needed to make it work. And I think when you look at the Game Pass app, when you look at Steam, which Call of Duty can be purchased on Steam, those are kind of turnkey environments to where you go in, you click, you play. You don't have to run the installers. You don't have to have any technical knowledge. You don't have to pick where the game installs. Windows sort of determines that for you. So you're also setting up a situation to where people choose, I want to play on a 50-inch screen at somewhere between 1440p and 4K, and Xbox is going to determine what my graphic settings look like, or I want to go spend the money and have a multi-purpose device, my daily driver, my video editor, whether it's a laptop or desktop, and play my way. And when I was younger, and I know you and I are of similar age, before the Xbox was a thing, folks, I sat at home and played Quake, the Wolfensteins of the world on PC. That's what I did. So I think we're kind of seeing that roll back around a little bit for this generation because PC gaming has become more accessible again. There was a period there where the gap between a consumer laptop, if you will, and a gaming laptop, the pricing was a very large gap, and that gap has gotten a lot smaller, so people are able to, and PC gaming is more accessible.
Yeah, I just want to end on this note. I want to correct some numbers in case those people out there are like, hey, you're wrong. The number one, and this is again for April 2024, top 20 best-selling games. I'll just go through the first 12 because it goes to our point. Stellar Blade, which was published by Sony, was number one. Hell's Divers 2 was published by Sony as well, and that was number two. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was published by Activision, which is now owned by Microsoft. That was number three. Sea of Thieves is number four. And again, that's Microsoft. Fallout 4, again through Bethesda, is also Microsoft, is number five. MLB The Show 24 is number six. Dragon's Dogma 2 is number seven. Fallout 76, again, also Microsoft via Bethesda, is number eight. Hogwarts Legacy, number nine. EA Sports FC 24 is number 12. Number 10. Rise of Ronin is number 11. And Grounded, again, Microsoft first game, is also number 12. And that game, Grounded, was ported to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation as the other games were. So again, Microsoft, isn't normally has a game or has that many games under their belt in the top 10, just because they've always been exclusive dry, so to speak. But we're seeing that, more of their games, because again, the big, larger purchases are showing up in that. And as far as Hell's Divers, which I believe, again, was also propelled mostly by people being able to access the game on PC, leads to your point of we're seeing the PC play a more integral role going forward for gaming. And again, I'm not saying this is the end of consoles, because I do believe Microsoft has another one coming up and Sony makes tons of money on it. But there is a shift to meet gamers in more places. The rigidness of only on the couch, only on the console, is starting to soften. With that being said, let's move on to our next topic, which is Microsoft's Edge getting a little bit more responsive UI interface. That's for consumers like you and I. And this is being made so by way of a new markup first architecture called Web UI 2.0. Basically, the gist of the story is that Microsoft is decompartmentalizing Microsoft's Edge development so that it can apply feature updates to specific aspects of the browser, which will make it lighter and faster to update. That's the idea. So instead of having to wait for an entire build, so last build that we're on is Edge 125, if I'm not mistaken, that's the current version. Instead of saying, "Hey, let's wait till 126 to push out updates or feature sets to certain aspects of the browser," the teams that are working on it can just say, "Hey, my update's ready to go," and they can push it out via this new markup first architecture, this Web 2.0. So if there's, say updates coming to favorites, new ways to implement favorites or toggle favorites, or the UI of favorites has changed, using the structure, it'll just be pushed out. And I think the next time you update your browser, the same way you do on Chrome, that feature will be there. And you won't have to wait for an entire build necessarily. Same thing goes for settings. If you're trying to update things, the way the UI looks for navigating passwords or your wallet or other browser essentials, you'll be able to do that. Performance, I think, is something we have on the screenshot here for those of you who are listening. There's the whole right side or left side, I guess, of it with that Copilot button that brings down the sidebar that allows you to get into different apps that are locked into a pane on the edge thing. That could all be updated or taken away or replaced or functionally adjusted on the fly. I believe they were saying that because of this, they've now made the UI experience of someone going into favorites about 40% faster. So again, for those of you who are seeing bloat or lag via bloat, hopefully this addresses this in the future. What do you think about it?
Well, I think we need a little more of this, and we need it from Microsoft. And I'm gonna kind of go out on a limb here. This is personal opinion. The more we're adding to browsers, the more we're trying to make things accessible, the more information we're putting in front of people, it's clogging up resources. I mean, when I prefer Chrome over Edge. Hate me for it. I'm gonna tell you why. When I open up Edge, it's nice that the bar to the side is over there with all the Microsoft Office, the 365 services, but that's taking resources, that's taking screen real estate. And several years ago, we got down to a place where ActiveX, for those that remember it, was separated from what we called Internet Explorer at the time. And then we went through where Adobe Flash was separated from what we called Internet Explorer at the time. And I think we're going through another cycle here of, yes, you're able to modularly, and that's the term I'm going to use, we're able to modularly update Internet Explorer and the Internet Explorer, listen to me, Edge, and the teams are able to push out their updates when they're ready. But I also hope that this is going to lead to a less fat of a web browser, because there's a lot of people out there that just want to access the web, have their email in front of them, and have their setup for what they like. And I think we kind of need to get back to some of that to some degree. And I think this is the first start. And I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm gonna say one more thing. Sorry about that.
No.
And I'm sure there's somebody out there, EU, that's saying, "Good, let's unbundle Edge. Let's give that another go. Let's see if we can make them unbundle Edge." And I wouldn't be surprised if that argument comes back up down the line.
Yeah, I don't know about that per se, but I do know. Again, I don't know if Edge will be less bloated, so to speak, as far as adding features and things. But the idea is that with this new markup first strategy, that they're developing in small bundles versus relying heavily on JavaScript code rendering. So I think that's another thing that should help with everyone feeling the browser be more optimized and performance be sped up, is that they're trying to move away from the JavaScript rendering engines as much with this new architecture. So for those of you who develop in JavaScript, you know that it could be a spaghetti plate of code that eventually slows down things if you can't just keep adding more to optimize it. So I think as Web UI 2.0 starts to make itself evident in the updates, hopefully that's, as they add, they can do a one for one. We add a feature, we optimize it, it works just as well as your browser did before, versus using the JavaScript methods where we add a feature. Now we have to kind of backtrack and work our way back to making it work as well as we can despite all this extra code that we have. Same way that Windows has kind of worked. We have tons of Windows code out there, and part of the reason why the operating system can feel slow or sluggish sometimes is because it's you know trying to process a bunch of stuff versus ripping out everything we want and saying, hey, keep it bare minimum and only at this. I think Edge going forward is going to have a ton of features, but because they're going to be broken off into their own section, those teams should be able to optimize them as best they can and see how this interworks with the rest of the browser. Who knows? With that being said, we're going to move on to YouTube playables. You brought this up. I have no idea about it. Explain it to me as though I were brand new to this whole thing.
YouTube playables. Well, guess what? When I read it, guess who else was a little bit new to this? I knew Netflix had some gaming initiatives out there, but I didn't know that YouTube was entering the platform, and this is kind of what it reminded me of. Basically, YouTube playables is exactly what it sounds like. You can play games inside of YouTube. For now, it's a part of YouTube. I did not see anywhere where they're necessarily charging for this as of yet, where the YouTube Premium is required. And they kind of took a step back in time. They brought back some of the old games. The main one that I saw that I recognized was a couple of the Angry Bird offerings. And I should have put a screenshot here that we could put on screen. I noticed it for the first time in my YouTube feed last night. So if you're scrolling down your YouTube feed, you've got your grid of YouTube videos there. They have carved out a spot between the grid that says playables on the left, and those games are listed out on the right. If you click one of those games, it kind of just fires the game up, kind of like it does a video window, except you can interact with that video window. It is available, which is neat, on Android and iOS. It's also available across all web browsers. Now, I get it. Kind of like we've talked about game, and game here and game everywhere. Everybody is seeing the gaming shift, but what this feels like to me is just a nice break in your day. You're scrolling YouTube. Most of us scroll YouTube more than we probably should, even during the workday. Well, let me stop and just take a brain break and play a round of Angry Birds. Now, what is neat? Your progress, your scores, your leaderboards, the games are full featured, and they are synced across your YouTube account. So whatever you have on one device is whatever is going to be the same on your second device. So you don't have to worry about playing on your phone at work and then coming home and playing on your PC and it being different. You're going to be able to pick up where you left off. So, does this lead to a gaming subscription with YouTube? Possibly. If it catches on and YouTube sees it as a viable feature. Now, YouTube is part of the Google empire. We know how that goes with features. Sometimes you get canceled before you get out of the gate. Isn't that right, Stadia?
Oh, nice callback. I like it. Good job. I don't have much to add to this except I had the gears in my head running about Google positioning YouTube as its entertainment wing for all things entertainment. I mean, they've stuffed podcast in there. They have YouTube Premium for TV shows. They're adding games in there now. People have for decades used it as a content creation tool to make more content that is viewable and entertaining for people. I could see where the business strategy is behind this. I do wonder if there's a method or a shoe that hasn't fallen yet to help switch people's behavior when going to YouTube. Because, like I said, YouTube as an experience is more of a passive experience when you go to listen to YouTube music, listen to podcasts, which again, I'm going to keep harping on because they've dropped the ball at integrating this poorly. I would not suggest using YouTube music as a podcast app. Or when you go to watch if you have news or streamers or content creators on YouTube, you're going there to passively engage with the content on there, unless you're a content creator where you go to upload stuff and then watch your analytics. But it isn't necessarily a, hey, let me go while I'm in the middle of, I don't know, waiting for an ad on YouTube, play a game. Maybe that's how they get people to go. But I kind of figure out, like, how do you get to the mindset of, I've watched my one video and I'm about to transition to another video. Let me stop there and play a game, depending on what device you're on as well. Like if I'm on my PC and I'm watching YouTube videos, is there now a keyboard command issue where I can play the game via my keyboard? Is it touch? If I'm on my phone, there's a lot more into actively gaming than to passively watching content. So I'm kind of wondering how they're going to work that out.
I got one more for you, and I'm gonna take you back to mine in your childhood. I did it in my childhood, and I'm sure you did it in yours. What does YouTube offer? YouTube offers movie rentals. So why would YouTube not offer gaming rentals? Think about it. A gaming rental streaming service. Why not? Everybody makes money. It kind of plays into the entertainment wing of YouTube. They've already got the YouTube gaming streaming side. I call it the side over there. They have, where you can stream your gaming. Maybe I'm reaching too far, but that's what crossed my mind last night when I was scrolling and saw it, because I kind of looked what was around it. What was around it on my screen. Sure, I had my row of, YouTube videos, that had my interest, but just within just a short scroll, I had the list of movies that they throw in there, buy, rent, and then it dawned on me, is this too far of a reach to where maybe they, let's call it what it is. I take my shots at Stadia, but the technology that ran Stadia was fantastic. I take nothing away from the technology. The business model didn't quite work, but the technology has been licensed for other things. So maybe renting Call of Duty with putting in some, copyright protection or rental protection, where you play it for 24 hours on YouTube and you determine whether you buy it. Am I reaching too far there?
Ex-Stadia employees are screaming, he's got the idea. I don't know about the marketing team yet, but I don't think you're reaching it. That's big. It makes a lot of sense. I'm going to move on to our next one, because we've probably talking about this one for a little bit, which is Apple's new OpenAI partnership, kind of ruffling feathers over at Microsoft for understandable and not so obvious reasons. We have, I believe, WWDC up in about a week or 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. I don't know why they want to be the darlings that are the last of the conventions or whatnot, or maybe I think Microsoft and Google moved theirs up for whatever reason. Either way, we're waiting 2 more weeks to hear about what Apple's going to do with its new AI push. And part of this push is that it just, I believe, is the Register is confirming that, the information website is confirming that Apple and OpenAI are at the end of a very year-long negotiation road to where I believe OpenAI will probably be mentioned, if not brought up on stage during WWDC, to talk about Apple using ChatGPT to power a lot of its software and services. Particularly those for like iPad OS, Mac OS, iOS, in apps like Apple Photos, iMessage, email settings, you name it. Apple's probably going to sprinkle a little bit of its own version of ChatGPT into these services. Now, where Microsoft comes in is that Microsoft has invested upwards of $12 billion into OpenAI over the past, 5-6 years. They are a large investor in them. Part of the way that their partnership and deal works with OpenAI is that they have basically a controlling stake in the for-profit version or business of OpenAI until OpenAI can pay back some of this investment, so to speak. And where Microsoft is concerned, obviously, the obvious portion of it is that OpenAI will be partnering with a direct competitor, which will potentially encroach on what Microsoft's trying to do, especially with their Copilot Plus PCs, because now that was their selling point. Windows PCs have this Copilot thing, and OpenAI specifically, powered by the industry's leading large language model provider, is now going to be also on Macs. And if you were, in conspiracy theories thinking that Macs were eating into Windows market share, this doesn't help that fact. But I think what Microsoft is more concerned about is revenue and stress on the service, on the platform, on the models. Because when you add Apple into this, you're adding 2 billion, I think, what is iOS devices that they say that they have out and about or in the world or whatnot. So how does this affect their development, OpenAI's development? Are they biting off more than they can chew, essentially? You have Microsoft, who also provides the cloud systems for OpenAI as part of the partnership. Apple will be using these cloud infrastructures in order to power their version of ChatGPT on their systems. How does the money work? And that's what I meant about the revenue question. Like, the deal works for OpenAI, but will they, how much of that deal partnership does Microsoft get from it? Because they will essentially be powering Apple's cloud infrastructure. What are your thoughts on some of this before I get into more details?
I'm going to stay as brief as possible because it would be very easy for me to get off track here. I have some very mixed feelings about Apple and AI. I don't think Apple can, and there's going to be some disagreement here. I don't think Apple consumers are going to adapt to AI the way we are anticipating. I'm expecting a very controlled / manipulated model when Apple says, "Hey, we now have AI on the iPhone. We now have AI on your MacBook." I just don't see the adoption that people might have in mind. Not on the Apple side of things. I do see it as a business concern for Microsoft that they are essentially, as you mentioned, powering the competitor's offering. Because to me, this goes back even just one step further. Eventually, this OpenAI Microsoft partnership is going to be strained. It's going to possibly split. They're going to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. So where does this go? And what we don't know from Apple is this OpenAI partnership a 1-year deal? Is it a 5-year deal? Is it a 10-year deal? Is Apple working on their own AI models in the background? And this is the stopgap until they get to that model. I think as many questions as Apple is answering by saying, "Hey, we're going to put OpenAI in our devices, and we're going to create this complicated relationship between Microsoft, OpenAI, and Apple." I think they're answering that question, but I think they're leaving a lot of questions not answered as well.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up too, so we can move on to the next topic. It's just interesting that I felt personally that this is a haphazard approach by Apple.
Yeah,
And I only say that in reference to the other ways that they've implemented things that have, I've never been an Apple fan, stan or whatever. I enjoy the technologies and I appreciate the way that they introduce them to users. But this just seems kind of rushed. I know that they are trying to market deal with Google as well for their Gemini, and they're also working on their own large language models in house. So to your point, I don't know how long this deal is going to last. I mean, if I'm OpenAI and I'm Sam Altman, I grab as many deals as possible because to your point, Microsoft's 10-year deal, I think they're already 2.5, 3 years into that. And Microsoft's already working on small language models to power Copilot and Windows and the various aspects of that. So I think they're trying to move away from depending on OpenAI specific large language models. Apple, again, if they can land the Gemini deal to whatever team, say they can somehow figure out a way to get Google to pay them for it, they will ditch OpenAI as fast as they can. Or if they come up with their own, this is very reminiscent of Google Maps. Like, I don't think they ever really wanted to be dependent on anybody, but because they haven't really had the investments, the long-term investments in cloud infrastructure like everyone else, they're building theirs. And maybe again, their alternative is to just make chips that can power these things on devices, and paired with small language models that answer back to small cloud infrastructures that they can control, and then get rid of everybody at some point off of their own devices. So for OpenAI, this is great. It just seems interesting that Apple would willingly jump into something that is so tied into Microsoft openly, that everybody kind of knows about. And I wonder if there's going to have to be a talk or sit down with Nadella and Altman and Cook at some point to be like, here's how we iron everything out so everybody makes money and everybody kind of gets what they need out of this deal for the next couple of years or whatever, how long.
I want to add one thing to that. You and I have talked about this many times here on the pod, and I know might sound to some like a little bit of an arrogant comment. Does Apple at this point really care about AI? And what I mean by that is in the form that we are assuming, because we talked about it last week. I think we talked about it the week before. We're seeing an AI shift. We saw it at Build last week. We saw Microsoft pushing AI in the business world. Microsoft has Azure. They've got the infrastructure to run it. Microsoft has a dedicated, very large suite of business products with Azure or without. They cater to the business market. They have a reason. So we will see AI be first there, and then the more advanced features will do what they always do. They will trickle back to the consumer. So when I look at Apple, what business products do they have? And I'm not picking on them. That's not a picking statement. What business products do they have? What cloud infrastructure do they have? I'm not referring to iCloud where you store your photos and documents, folks. I'm referring at a business level. What do they have? They cater more to education is big with Apple. They're always pushing the creator every chance they get. Like Kareem and I here doing the pod, they wished we had a MacBook in front of both of us. They're pushing that. So I get that there'll be some kind of AI there to manipulate your photos. There's probably going to be some AI there to help you with your videos. That plays into their marketing. There's probably going to be some AI there to give you Siri 2.0, 2.5, 3.0. But beyond that, does Apple really care about the features that we assume they're going to care about? I'm not sure.
No, they don't. And to your point, I think they are seeing this as a low investment, so to speak, so far, high reward marketing model. Essentially, what they're doing is they aren't as reliant on AI as a revenue builder for them, but because of the creatives, because of we saw with what Microsoft produced in was it that app Create or whatever, the one where you can like start to draw something, and then AI fixes it for you or makes it more elaborate.
Designer.
Apple can start putting that into Apple Photos and make its own sketch thing. That is a marketing thing that Apple can run with, and they don't necessarily need to make money on it because they are a $1 trillion company, and their investment in cloud so far doesn't need to pay for itself because they're using everybody else's. So they can say, hey, you know what? Here's an amazing creator tool via AI that we don't need to make any money from it, and we'll sell it with every device you have, or the way to make money for is that we just charge you a little bit more for the device you're already paying for to get it. That's how we balance it out, and we can say that ours is the best. Whereas Microsoft needs to make money off it because they have a huge investment in cloud for this. They need to make money on that. Google has to recoup whatever they're going to take away from advertisers with this new AI model. So they have a specific lane that they can't just give away AI things for. Apple is the only one positioned to be like, hey, we don't need to make money on this creator thing because our investment's so minimal and it's so far. When it starts to, when we start to invest more in it, then again, we have a couple different ways we can charge it. We can charge it through services, which, they keep touting in all their earnings calls, like, hey, our services are going up, or we can just charge the devices. And again, Google and Microsoft can't do that just yet. But we'll talk more about that probably during WWDC when we find out exactly what things they're going to bring. We're going to move on to our next story, which is yours, which is Redfall. It's kind of a sad story, so to speak. Get us into it.
I hate to give people a sad story here on a Friday. I really do, but I felt like this was worth the coverage because Redfall has gotten its Game 4 update, and that's unfortunately is the final update of Redfall because the studio Arcane Austin was part of the studio closures that we talked about 2 weeks ago now. So this, Microsoft is closing down Arcane Austin, which made Redfall. This is as I said, this is the 4th update. The big thing about this update, you get full offline play, and they made it very clear that offline play is just that. Pull your internet connection, turn the internet off. Your Xbox still works. Redfall will also play. They did update some of the objectives in the game to make it easier for you to get to the bigger bosses, to be able to identify who the bigger bosses are in the game. And the bigger bosses in the game are identified by a purple area on your map. And, they kind of signed it off with a note that said, a note from Arcane Austin. We're proud to deliver to you Redfall's Update 4. We're thankful for the millions of players who have joined us. From everyone at Arcane Austin, thank you for playing our games and loving our worlds. It's been an honor to deliver these experiences to you, Arcane Austin. And it's just sad, folks. I mean, was Redfall a huge hit? No. Was it Call of Duty levels? No. It kind of fell on its face when it was first released. There was a lot of bugs. We discussed them. But I sense that there's always been a constant effort to listen to the gamer, to make the game better. And I feel like this was one of those updates. We promised it. We're delivering it. Best of luck to you. Close the door. We're out. And that's just it. And I always feel sad when I see that Redfall. I do have it installed. I will be very sad when I see that Redfall icon on my screen because I know what I have will be all I'll ever get. That game will probably never be reborn. It will never be updated. That's it. So that finality kind of hits home with a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to try and bring us up a little bit, but it's still kind of a dark situation. For those of you listening, we have a screenshot up of the game, and it looks like what happened to the studio. There's a player standing in front of another player with the gun aimed at him. It's like they're taking him out to the shed to get rid of him. And that is what Microsoft unfortunately did to this hardworking group. It is heartbreaking, but an apt photo, so to speak. For those of you who are fans or gamers of Redfall, I hope you guys go out and grab this update. I hope you appreciate what it is that this team has worked on. I more so hope that the people on this team find jobs elsewhere, go on to make even better games, or pursue other avenues of creativity in their career. Because to David's point, I appreciate all the work. I can't do it, but I do love to sit back and appreciate other people and praise them for those who can do it. and you guys delivered a game. You were consistent, you stayed with the updates, you worked it out for as best as you could on the budget you guys could work with, on the time frames that you guys were given. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
Redfall.
you.
Last but not least, our story is going to be about Recall. I am a little upset about this because I feel like there's been a lot of misinformation coming out about this. And for those of you who may have been living under a rock for the past week and a half, Microsoft introduced a new feature. It's called Recall. They use the word AI. They created a lot with this thing. It is a cool new aspect of Windows that they plan to push and help sell new PCs with these new NPUs that have these trillions of operations requirement. Essentially, what Recall does is it takes a screenshot every 3 to 5 seconds of your operating system, or what's on your operating system. So if you're in Windows and you're doing like us, you're filming a podcast, there will be thousands or hundreds of screenshots of whatever's on your screen at the time. If it's, we use StreamYard and OneNote and Teams, all that stuff is being captured so that at some point you'll be able to recall that in reference using natural language AI, particularly Copilot probably, and go in and say, hey, you know what? I need a screenshot of a Redfall scene, an issue, or a screenshot from the game Redfall, and it'll pull up all those references, and this will be in it because we used it as a reference for this. Now, because it was referenced with AI, and AI is sort of a nebulous term, and screenshots of your device, people ran with the story and said, hey, Recall is spying on you. Microsoft is spying on you via Windows, and this is a privacy nightmare for everybody that Microsoft shouldn't get into. And this was, a bad call by Microsoft, and they're back at it again, and they're doing the wrong things. What were some of the things you were hearing about it in the past week, David?
Very similar. And I think we touched on it briefly last week when we first really learned what Recall was all about. I think I kind of cracked the joke that the EU would be all over this one.
You did, yeah.
And
I mean, to your
I
point, though,
see it coming.
The EU already said, hey, we're going to investigate this. They've already said it, and I think you and I were discussing, and this is where I kind of wanted to get into this whole specific topic, is that Recall, for those of you who remember, what was it? Was it called Timeline?
Yeah, Timeline was what it was before, or what
In
we're
Windows.
I see where you're going with this. It was Timeline.
Yeah, Windows 10 introduced something called Timeline, and I believe from a few security people, there was a bit of murmurs, not necessarily the uproar that we're getting now, but it offered a very similar kind of aspect where it would take thumbnails of previously used apps in the state that they're in and capture them all so that you would be able to go through this timeline and pull out things that you were doing in specific apps. So again, if you were torrenting a movie or game or music or whatever, and you wanted to go back to that specific thing and maybe figure out what it was that you were downloading at that date. Like you can't find it on your system, it went to some junk file, but you need to just recall that experience again. You could go to Timeline and pull it out. That was the idea. Again, people weren't necessarily upset with it because, again, it was supposed to be on device. It didn't use the term AI. It doesn't go to the cloud. People were like, all right, and I just won't use it. That was the behavior, the attitude from it. Microsoft came out and said Recall, again, is on device, doesn't go to the cloud despite it using AI. What it does is it uses AI to essentially make an amalgamation of whatever your search is. It just pulls information that's on your device only. But again, people still freaked out about this. And you and I talked about that your computer already tracks practically everything you do in a couple different systems.
Making it where you can see it.
Exactly, where you can have access to that specific information as well. And again, Recall is going to be opt-in. So I'm gonna kind of run down through some of the breakdown. Our buddy Zach Bowden over at Windows Central did a really good markup of this. I suggest you guys go and read it over there. But he kind of walks through what it is Recall does and how it's going to work. And out of the box, what you're going to be given is an option to opt into it. So this isn't like opt out of. This is where Microsoft usually gets into trouble. They opt you into something and you have to opt yourself out of it. You'll opt into this. And then it becomes an additional download because it's going on to that specific device. So again, this isn't like they just turn the switch on to the cloud and now it's working and it's making pings back and forth to a system that you have no control over. This thing is being downloaded onto your system. Recall. It's going to take some time because I think it's going to take up about 25 gigs of storage. So again, just like the games that are your games that you download to your system to play offline, they have to take up time and space to download. That's how the system kind of works, and that's how you can kind of understand it in your own head if you're wondering about it. In addition to that, it's encrypted information, so Microsoft won't have access to it. You necessarily won't unless you figure out a way to unencrypt this information somehow. You have some kind of friends over at the CIA who can do that. Who knows? And it uses AI models again that leverage the NPU, the neural processing units, on specific devices. So again, if you have Recall, I think some people have figured out Recall can work on devices that don't have NPUs. I don't know what the performance is going to be like or how well that's going to work, but Microsoft's selling this as a kind of combined effort, NPU plus new experience software. And it's using these small language models, natural language parsers, image encoders, and I believe a screen region detector, optical character recognizers as well. These are all part of the models and languages that are working together to basically detect images, video, audio, text, and anything else that's on the screen that can be leveraged or utilized when you go back and check out these thumbnail presentations. It's going to be using up to about 40 different AI models to kind of do this all at once, which is again why it's relying on the NPU, so it doesn't slow down your PC while it's doing it. Now, for those of you who just all that information flew over your head and you're only worried about the security aspects of it, this is I think what everyone was kind of crying about. Again, the feature uses encrypted information on device, is not tied to an account, not tied to the cloud of any sort. So again, once you leave this device, you'll have to start your whole recall journey all over again on a new device. That's the way it works. And they will not take or snapshot anything that is done in Microsoft Edge and Incognito. I think you have to go in and manually tell it not to do it for other apps like Chrome's in private or whatever. And it won't record anything that has a digital rights management tag on it. So again, if you're watching something on Disney Plus and you pull up a screenshot saying, hey, I want to see X-Men 97, and you were watching it, it'll pull up a black screen because that has digital rights management stuff attached to it. So again, all those DRM things will not be saved on this as well. Again, these are limitations for some people, privacy buffers for others. I believe one other thing is that although the Windows Semantic Index database stays local on your computer, it would only be private if you take the proper precautions, since Recall doesn't include storage security protections on someone's sign-in. So if someone were to manually take your device and start typing in random searches for stuff, they will be able to see the information. You'll have to figure out a way to bioauthenticate and lock your device, wipe your device remotely, maybe through Windows VM or something like that. But though that is the only other privacy thing that I think is valid for a lot of people, is that, hey, if someone steals my device, they'll be able to find all this information. And that is true currently. If people know how to access the cache on your device, they can recall every keystroke that you've ever done. They can go through the cache on the different, pull up saved passwords and credit card information. They can go into your Edge browser, Chrome browser, and go into that section of wallet or password and pull up all that information as well. So I just wanted to say all this to say that Recall, as much as the EU is going to look into it and everyone's kind of had their whole hullabaloo about it and fear-mongering, isn't anything new. It's just presented in a new way. And I think Microsoft's getting a lot of grief over it. I think a lot of people will at first not opt into it, and then see friends who have utilized it or coworkers who utilize it in a very effective way to get information much more quickly through the search on Windows and say, hey, maybe I should opt into it. And at some point, I can see them tying it to your account, because people like, not only do I like using this feature and I don't mind said privacy issues that I might have had before, but I want to use it on my home device, or I want to use it when I like, get a new device or transfer somewhere else. So I think recall fear mongering might come and go quicker than some other things that Microsoft's been accused of.
Well, I'm gonna be that guy. I have wanted to be. I have wanted to be that guy over this all week. You own a smartphone, and yes, I'm going somewhere with this. You own a smartphone. You sign into your social media. People will clamor over social media any way they possibly can. You sign into X, you sign into Threads, you sign into the controversial service TikTok. You scroll those videos, you watch them, you record them, you leave comments, likes, stickers, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. I think we're reaching the point where there has to be something up here, common sense, to where people are going to have to say, look, if I'm going to turn these devices on, I have to accept the fact that I'm giving up a certain level of privacy when I sign in, when I make that account, when I interact with this service. I understand that we don't want social security numbers out there. I understand we don't want private data out there. You don't want personal things leaking out. And we want the EU, we want the FTC to step in and just make all this nice and secure where us as the user, we can be blinded and just do what we want to do because the FTC and the EU made sure that this was secure. I think we're reaching the point where some of these features have to fall on the user's shoulders. If you're going to buy a device and you're going to watch inappropriate content, for example, or what some people might consider inappropriate, then don't turn recall on. It's that simple. And I don't mean to sound so stern, but we're asking these agencies and these bodies of people to make up for common sense, whereas sometimes just use a little common sense. What is the purpose of this device? If it is a homework device, then yeah, you might want recall on it. Is it an educational device? Yes, you might want recall on it. Is it a work device that my company does not care if recall is running on it? Yes, you might want recall on it. Is it the one that, sits next to your couch that you watch movies, you watch your personal content, you talk to your girlfriend, you talk to your boyfriend? Maybe you don't want recall on it. Maybe
Well,
you don't flip that switch. Let's use
and,
some common sense here, too.
and to your point, recall can be paused. This isn't like an all or nothing buffet of privacy fear mongering for Microsoft. Like they've so far put in a lot of stopgaps, and I'm sure that we even more that they couldn't have imagined that they will get from user feedback to then say, hey, you know what? We've added some additional layers of options for people because that is what Microsoft does. Beyond anything, everyone always says like, oh, Microsoft, just kind of does what they want to do. They put in ads and they did this, they do that. They do provide a multitude of ways to customize Windows and to interact with its operating systems and software and services. Sometimes to our dismay, the redundancy of things that they allow. We talked about sticky notes earlier this week, having 2 or 3 different ways to get to it on depending on whatever device you're using and however you want to get to it. Same thing with Outlook. There's 2 different Outlooks. Like sometimes you're just like Microsoft, just pick one thing and figure it out. But at least when it comes to recall, you can pause recall in specific instances. You can add in exclusions to recall, things that you don't want recorded. To David's point, if you are someone who wants to go home and enjoy a little adult entertainment on your laptop after work, you can say, hey, don't record either from these hours, I'm going to pause it, or don't record these sites, or don't record incognito. and not have to worry about that. And then 8 o'clock rolls around, you're back at work, system is back up, and you can recall all the work stuff that you need to. That is the option. It isn't like, oh, recall is recording everything, or I don't get it at all. So I think we should at least let it roll out, let
And
people
see.
get into it, see the super niche instances in which people have comments and feedbacks, and see how prevalent those comments and feedbacks are, and see how quickly. I think that is more than anything. Quickly, Microsoft goes to address those things beyond anything, because again, they're not fortune tellers. They're just putting out a thing, saying like, "Hey, we think that you'll be able to use this." And in our vision of it, we sat at the drawing board at a whiteboard, saying, "This is how we want Recall to work." We've been in the lab for 2 years, a team of 50 to 100 people. We haven't really talked with or dealt with outside people. So here it is. Tell us what you want from it now. But instead, we got people who ran to the internet saying, "Hey, Microsoft is the Microsoft with the M/$ again," and they're going for the worst case scenario before even trying it out. That's what I wanted to get off my chest. That's how I kind of wanted in this podcast. If you got one other thing you want to say, go ahead, and then we'll do our wrap up and let people go on about their weekend.
I think we just need to take the advice you just gave people, and I don't want this to end off a topic of tech. Let's just say there's a lot of things going on in our world right now, and people in general seem to be very jumpy, very quick to make conclusions, very quick to say, yes, this is how it is, and you don't have a whole lot of information. So recall is just like any other piece of software. Version 1 will come out. Within a few days, there will be version 1.1. A few days later, there will be version 1.2. And we will see this evolve, and there will be a decision made. Microsoft does track stats on how these devices are used, that they can see how the software is used. They will listen to feedback. They will make the adjustments. And if recall isn't something that somebody wants, they'll remove it. So it's not like okay, Windows is always going to have recall. I'm going to go buy a Mac. Well, if you want to have the Mac discussion with me, let's talk about Time Machine. So we can have this discussion on either side of the spectrum. Just be smart, folks. That's it. I want people to enjoy their devices, enjoy this usefulness of AI, and help these companies make it better. If we don't contribute something, then we don't go anywhere. And that's a little bit of life advice too. If you don't contribute some feedback, and this sucks is not feedback. Meaningful.
I feel like I'm getting called out over here. Thanks.
It's got to be meaningful, for Microsoft to improve the product. We've all got to help this move forward. I'm no expert on AI. My buddy Kareem over here, he's no expert on AI. Guess what? Neither is OpenAI, neither is Sam Altman. These things are evolving. Feedback is what's going to make this work or not work.
Speaking of feedback, where can people come talk to you if they want to? And we didn't talk about it here, but maybe we'll add a note, put a pin in it, talk about it next week. If they want to talk to you about Google screwing up AI, because they have been really crapping the bed on this whole Google Insights thing. Where can people go talk to you about that if they want to continue that conversation?
Please come talk to me about these things. David PHA 1978. We're going to call it X for 2 weeks in a row. I'm also on Threads, David PHA 1978. So feel free, folks. I don't mind it. If it's a constructive discussion, I'm willing to have it with anybody.
Yeah, you can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter. I am not going to call it X because you can also find me at Kareem Anderson on Instagram or Threads. Again, I mentioned that for those of you who don't really know, but maybe you want to find another place to talk about this or read about it. Google released Insights. It's basically Copilot competitor for Google search, and it is not doing well. So if you want to talk to me, give us some specific instances of which you've used it, and it's giving you crappy answers. Again, find us on social media. Head to the website if you want to. You can drop something in the comments, and we always check those and respond.
Yes.
Otherwise, like I said, we'll meet you guys next week for another pod, and maybe we'll talk more in depth about that as well. But other than that, go out and enjoy your weekend. Go touch some grass. Maybe that'll help you come back and appreciate the software and services that we are all playing with these days, and maybe add a different perspective and feedback. Maybe like you and I, so tunnel vision into this stuff that we can't see the broader use cases that some of these companies are going for. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Have fun.
Have a good weekend, everybody, and enjoy that brand new AI-powered lawnmower. It's coming.
Bye.